Odin was stunned. During his long sleep, he had seen everything on Earth and even knew what Wi-Fi was, but he had never imagined the Ancient One could be in such a wretched state. "You hung her corpse in the academy and refined it into an undead?" Odin asked, staring at Lion as if seeing him for the first time. Lion was taken aback by the wild leap of imagination and quickly denied it. "No, it isn't a corpse. It's a portrait, an image woven with magic." "A portrait?" Odin muttered. "That is actually a clever bit of sorcery." He didn't press the matter further. His attention drifted back to the sea beyond them. In the dark, waves roiled like a threat bearing down on the shore. After a pause, Odin looked at Lion again. "It may be late, Lord Lion, but I must ask, will you aid Thor when Asgard is threatened?" Odin had once been a god king who commanded the cosmos. His armies were inexorable. In the destroyer armor, he was invincible. And with Gungnir, he swept the stars. Yet, like many aging fathers, he could not let go of his children. Lion didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at the torch in his hand and said, flatly, "I wouldn't attend just anyone's funeral." Odin froze, then unexpectedly chuckled. "A funeral is not an end for Asgardians. Valhalla may be open to Kamartaj as well." That offer, eternal refuge for the dead, was a staggering gift. Lion, however, shook his head. "Unnecessary. The souls of mages either belong to the Vishanti, to eternity, or they answer to me. There's nowhere else for them to go." He patted Odin's shoulder and stepped back toward the circle of Kamartaj sorcerers. Neither man spoke the bargain aloud, but a compact hung between them. Leon had agreed in some measure to watch over Asgard, and Odin had offered his last leverage in return. It was small comfort. Odin felt regret, thinking of when they had first met 6 or 7 years before, when Lion had been weaker and might have been entrusted with more. If he had placed his greatest treasures in Lion's care then, perhaps Asgard's future would not weigh so heavily on him now. All he could do was sigh. "Come to me," he called after Lion had walked away. Thor and the others gathered around. Odin first gave a brief farewell to Frigga. Then his expression grew stern. "My time is short. There are things you must know." Thor's brow creased. "Father, what do you mean? You only just awoke from your sleep. How could you die so soon?" Odin looked at Thor with equal parts pride and sadness. "Ragnarok is coming. I have held her back for 1,000 years. I will not hold her back any longer. That is your task, Thor." Thor reached to protest, but Odin stopped him with a single word. "Kneel, Thor." Thor hesitated, then knelt on both knees before Odin's ship. Odin remained seated and reached out to rest his hand on Thor's head. "I, Odin, Allfather, declare that from this day forth Thor Odinson, my eldest son, shall be king of Asgard. You will inherit my power. Surpass my limits. Seek peace for Asgard. Let all your deeds be for Asgard alone." A line of unseen divine energy flowed from one to the other as Odin's force was stripped and bestowed. Thor felt it reconfigure, the old Odin force settling and reshaping into his own strain, Thor's force. Loki watched from the shadows, expression unreadable as a storm flickered across his face. The transfer was brief. Odin held Thor's head, spoke a few words, and released his hand. "I entrust my power to you. Remember, Asgard is not merely a place." He touched Thor's cheek. "I am proud of you, Thor. Your potential exceeds mine. You will do better than I did." Then Odin turned his attention to Loki. "And you, my other son." Loki's eyes widened. He had not expected to be involved. He stepped forward with a silent, wary movement. "Loki, I know I have failed you," Odin said, "but your nature, the storm within you, comes from me. You are my child, Loki." Odin clasped both their arms. "You must remember, you will face Hela, the goddess of death, your sister." Both brothers gasped. "She was my firstborn," Odin continued, "but her ambition grew beyond my control. I imprisoned her in the underworld, but after my death she will break free. Her power is tied to Asgard. Here she will become invincible. You must heed the Sorcerer Supreme." Odin's gaze found Lion, and he gave a small nod. He offered no further explanation. Then, with a long, weary motion, he lay flat upon the deck. "What a beautiful sky," he said softly, looking up at the stars. He folded his hands over his chest. "I love you, my children. Now push me into the sea." Odin's aura waned. His breath thinned and his body cooled. Thor tightened his jaw so hard his knuckles gleamed, fighting back tears. With a roar that bent his muscles, he shoved the small craft into the dark water. Thor's strength drove the boat outward. In the torchlight, Odin's silhouette receded until it was only a shadow on the black waves. An Asgardian drew a bow and notched an arrow. A signal rocket, or some kindling flare, shot up and fell back onto the boat, igniting it. Flames licked the wood as the craft drifted farther and farther, becoming a scatter of sparks on the horizon. At the edge of Asgard, it dwindled into nothing. Odin was dead, his soul passed to Valhalla. On the shore, Thor finally let the tears fall. Loki stood frozen, trembling, staring at his own hands. Whether it was Odin's death or a rare stirring of compassion within him, Loki felt his divine power return, but there was no joy in it. He sank into a deep, numbed silence. All the Asgardians were silent with him. In that hush, the wind rose suddenly, as if grief had given rise to a real storm. Thunder rolled in the heavens, faint at first, then sharp. Lightning began to tear the sky. Every gaze turned to Thor. His fists clenched, lightning danced across his skin, and electric sparks flared from his hair to the corners of his eyes. Thor awakened, his power surging more fiercely than before. The sight bolstered the Asgardians, a hard, necessary hope. Then a voice cut through the wind. "Such familiar lightning. So the old man is dead, and you are his successor?" A dark green spatial rift opened. A slender woman stepped through, radiating the chill of death. Long black hair fell around her face. Her eyes were predatory, imperious. "It seems everyone has come to see him off," she said with scorn. "How touching and foolish." She raised her chin. "Now kneel." She stood there as if enthroned, looking down at them all. "Come and welcome your true king." Chapter 42. Thor is instantly killed. Odin's last words to Thor and Loki still hung in the air when the woman appeared, arrogant and unconcerned, her voice halting any further discussion. She was Hela, Odin's eldest daughter, brimming with ambition, the one fate had tied to Ragnarok. She demanded obeisance as if she were reclaiming a throne. The Asgardians did not bow. Even on Hela's home ground, no one moved to kneel. Not the Warriors Three, not Heimdall. In that moment, only Thor was the true king in their eyes. Among the small circle of sorcerers, Bruce Banner glanced nervously around and leaned toward Wong. "This isn't a ceremony, right? We don't have to kneel, do we?" Banner's instinct was to defer to local customs. If Asgard had a rule, he would have followed it. Wong did not answer. Karl Mordo, standing nearby, stared at Banner as if he were daft. "Kamartaj doesn't kneel to Asgard," he said. "We don't kneel to Odin. We salute as sorcerers." Mordo had once been cowed before Odin. Now he stood with an unbent back. Banner laughed weakly and nodded, hoping he'd misunderstood. Around Thor, electricity settled. He bent and reclaimed Mjolnir from the ground, his face hardening into resolve. Odin's death had clarified everything. Thor was now the realm's foremost guardian. The woman before him was the uninvited threat Odin had warned about, an enemy to be stopped. "So you're Hela," Thor said, lifting Mjolnir. "The sister father spoke of, the one fated to bring Asgard to ruin," Hela replied. "He really said that?" Hela, who had been centering herself to draw power back into her, opened her eyes. In Asgard, her strength returned fully. Her long hair swept back, and the air around her thrummed with sovereign force. She studied Thor with clear contempt. "You do not resemble him at all. Weak, irresolute, reckless, you are not fit to be Asgard's king." Her gaze traveled over the assembled crowd. The divine realm's power let her read the spark of godhood in each person. When it fell on Frigga and Loki, she sneered. "Odin hid the truth well. You know nothing of me. I am Hela, Death, Odin's firstborn, the true heir, the rightful ruler of Asgard. Your true king is me. I will lead you beyond the 9 realms, fulfill our glorious destiny, and conquer the cosmos. Now kneel before your queen, all of you, Lightning Boy." With a gesture, she smoothed back her hair, and it coalesced into a black, jagged crown. A chill of death-scented divinity spread across the shoreline. The Asgardians recoiled. Even the sorcerers, watching Strange remain calm, merely observed. They had fought through worse storms. Just the day before, they'd battled demons in Mephisto's hell. To them, this felt like a terrible family drama played out on an epic scale, not an immediate threat. Loki felt the pressure. He drew Frigga behind Thor as if to shield her. "Damn her," he muttered. "She's using our lines. Thor, go stop her." Thor's grip on Mjolnir tightened. He trusted Odin absolutely. Odin had warned that Hela would bring Ragnarok. However little Thor cared for crowns, he could not hand the realm over. Lightning wrapped around him. His funeral robes shrugged away and his red and silver armor flared back to life. Hela's lips curled. "Oh, are you going to rebel?" "No, I'm sending you back to the underworld," Thor said. He roared, thunder and lightning pouring from him. He hurled Mjolnir high and brought it down with all his might. Hela only smiled, and as the hammer fell, she lifted a hand that had been resting on her hip and caught the head of Mjolnir as if it were nothing. The impact barely registered. With her other hand, she thrust a blade of shadow, a long black sword, through Thor's chest as easily as slicing soft cheese. Everything happened so fast that the crowd did not even have time to react before Thor's eyes widened and blood spilled from his mouth. "Thor!" Queen Frigga cried, lunging forward until Loki gripped her back and forced her into place. Impossible. Thor was impaled, but he stared at Mjolnir with disbelief. How could his hammer have been caught? Hela sneered. "The previous master of Mjolnir was me, fool." She snapped her fingers, closed her palm around the hammer, reversed her grip, and smashed the handle into Thor's face. He arced backward and crashed into the sea with a heavy, drowning splash. Gasps ran through the crowd. Hela watched the water ripple and then turned to the gathered Asgardians. "You see, from this day forward, I am the ruler of this realm." Silence fell. Loki pulled Frigga close and, with a quick flare of green light from his palm, cloaked them both in sorcerer robes to blend into the group. He exhaled in relief, then caught the puzzled stare of the sorcerer Daniel beside him. "What?" Loki offered with a nervous smile. "I'm from Kamartaj too. I brought a family member. That's allowed, right?" Daniel only blinked and looked away. Frigga said nothing. She touched Loki's cheek, then stared anxiously out toward the water. Thor might still be alive, she told herself, but how to turn what had just happened around? Hela, standing at the center of that silence, was growing impatient. She took a single step forward. Everyone else instinctively stepped back. Warriors and lesser gods alike watched her warily. This Asgard was not the one she remembered. 1,000 years had changed it. Here she felt like an intruder, an invader. Her smile died, her eyes turned razor cold. Chapter 543, Diana, daughter of Zeus. "You have two choices," Hela said coldly. "Kneel or die." She was already growing impatient. Still, no one knelt. Instead, from the crowd, the warriors three and other fighters stepped forward. "We will not kneel to you. Leave this place, Hela. This is the All-Father's command," Vandal called, gripping his longsword. "Leave?" Hela's voice was icy. "Did you not hear me before? I am your new ruler." Volstagg answered, voice ringing with defiance. "No matter who you are, leave Asgard or surrender." Hundreds of warriors filed forward and stood before Hela, torches held high, many without weapons. Facing them was Hela, a being who could kill Thor in an instant. Their presence was a declaration of resolve, a willingness to die rather than bow. Hela laughed, exasperated. "Very well, come then." She flicked her wrist and summoned 2 longswords. Among the mages, Diana bumped Leon with her shoulder. "Aren't you going to do anything?" Leon shrugged. "I already have." Diana blinked. "Huh? Do you remember your fight with Ares?" Leon asked, and Diana's mind flashed to the memory of watching Ares kill her mother. She realized then, illusion. She scanned the mages and saw Loki dazed, clearly under an illusion. Remembering her own past, Diana sensed that soon both Loki and Thor would experience a surge of power. She turned back to Hela. "Leave her to me." Hela was already moving. She kicked Vandal aside, thrust a longsword into Hogun's chest, and prepared to deliver the killing blow. A brilliant golden bracer flashed up and blocked the strike with a ringing clang. The blade was deflected. Hela took a step back, narrowing her eyes to appraise the gleaming figure before her. "Who are you?" "Another of Odin's new children," she sneered. Diana withdrew her arm, rose to her feet, and met Hela's gaze. "No, I am the daughter of Zeus." "Zeus?" Hela's mind flashed with disdain at the image of the debauched old god. She had not expected any valor from him. "Does the All-City also wish to meddle in Asgard's affairs? Fine, I'll kill you first, then go kill Zeus and take the All-City." Hela's arrogance filled the air. To her, the universe was nothing but fertile ground for conquest. She gave Diana no more time to speak and launched herself forward, longsword imbued with the power of death. Hela's fighting was unlike Thor's thunderous, flashy assaults. Every one of her moves carried the chill, corrosive aura of death. Wounds she scored were hard to heal, the injuries themselves lingering like a curse. But Diana was no longer the warrior she had been when she first ascended to godhood. Leon's growing strength, his blood steeped with multiversal essence, had changed them all. Even a trace of his aura had become a treasure. The residue of his 3-day battle with Diana and the others had transformed them. When they awoke, even Wanda, once the weakest, found her bones as dense as vibranium. Diana, in particular, now rivaled a Skyfather. Hela's strikes were met and blocked. Every blow she threw was countered. Their battle rose from the shore into the sky, then into the clouds. The dark night flared with golden light as shockwaves of power burst outward. Those on the shoreline could only watch the bright flashes with stunned faces. On the Kamar-Taj side, many mages burned to take a shot at Hela. If Leon had not restrained them, Tony would have been first to don his new warp drive armor and charge. The Asgardians watched the mages with a mixture of awe and unease. The Midgard Magi who had bested them years ago had become ever more mysterious and perilous. Everyone craned their necks at the trembling night sky, waiting for the battle's outcome. Some among the Kamar-Taj ranks, less noble, even hoped Diana would lose so they could take her place. Asgard prayed as one, for even their strongest, Thor, had been defeated before. Hope rested on their allies. Then, from the roiling dark ocean, currents of electricity began to writhe like serpents. They thickened and surged toward the surface. With a thunderous roar, great waves leapt into the sky. Thor reappeared, wrapped in stormlight, fully revived. "Hela!" he bellowed, eyes rimmed with red. He no longer cared for Mjolnir. Locking onto Hela's aura, he became a bolt of lightning and shot at her. No one could say precisely what he had experienced on the seabed, nor, in truth, did he fully understand it himself. He remembered watching Hela kill their mother, the Warriors 3, and slaughter Asgard until only her undead army remained. Whether that had been an illusion or a premonition, the sight had ignited his thunder god power to a new peak. He was ready to risk everything to stop her. In the illusion he had seen, he had urged Loki to take the eternal flame and go to Muspelheim to find Surtur, to have Surtur destroy Asgard, because if Asgard remained standing with Hela in command, she would never be defeated. Thor rushed at Hela to buy Loki time. Loki, in the crowd of mages, trembled, his eyes quickly turning bloodshot. He had been caught in the same vision. But then he met Frigga's anxious gaze on the ground. Mother?" he whispered, and the illusion shattered. Loki collapsed into Frigga's arms, weeping. Unlike Thor, Loki's shaking did not culminate in a power surge. The tragedy had made him more mature, but not stronger. Thor struck with the most terrifying thunder he had yet unleashed, but Hela stood firm. With a returning sweep of her sword, she made the lightning-born thunder god bleed across the sky and sent him crashing down. Hela was, after all, Odin's eldest daughter. Even if Thor had inherited a throne and status equal in some respects, she was still far stronger. Thor fell again. In the end, it was Diana who subdued Hela. Though Hela possessed boundless stamina and an immortal life within Asgard, Diana's power had ascended beyond hers. Diana bound Hela with the truth lasso and forced her to her knees before Leon. Even if Hela poured forth all her divine might, it accomplished nothing. "Damn you, daughter of Zeus," Hela spat, fury burning in her eyes. "You dare humiliate me. I am the god of death. I am immortal." Her gaze swept the gathered faces. She saw Thor, foolishly smiling despite his wounds and holding Frigga. She saw Loki staring back at her with hatred. These weaklings had dared to stand against her. Hela raged, showing no sign of yielding. "You cannot bind me. When I break free, your deaths will come." Chapter 544, Thor's Mjolnir, Hela's Crown. The Asgardians who had been cheering Hela's defeat slowly fell silent. Hela was right. Apart from the sorcerers from Kamar-Taj, no one in Asgard could truly stop her. The warrior's eyes drifted to Thor, who was still holding Frigga and muttering, "Thank the Nine Realms, you're not dead." Only when his mother squeezed his hand did Thor take in the scene. He let go awkwardly and straightened his armor. "Ahem, well, we can lock her back in that place." "Helheim," Loki supplied from the side. "Yes, we can lock her in Helheim, just like Father did." Thor brightened and turned to the crowd, trying to put on a show of authority. "At least she can't stay in Asgard. What do you all think?" Before the warriors could answer, Hela sneered. "How do you propose to lock me in Helheim, little prince? You raised under Odin's wing and don't even know what Helheim is." Thor froze, glancing between Hela and the gathered warriors. He really didn't know where Helheim was. He leaned toward Loki and whispered, "Loki?" Loki rolled his eyes. "Give it up. You couldn't beat her in a fight. How could you expect to imprison her in Helheim like Father did?" After Odin's death, Loki used Father again. Thor considered Loki's words for a few moments and had to admit there was a point. He dropped his voice and asked, "Then what should we do?" Loki shrugged. "Ask whoever becomes the king of Asgard." Thor shot him an exasperated look. Loki let out a long, impatient breath and glanced at the Kamartaj sorcerers who had been watching. Thor followed his gaze and suddenly understood. "Aha!" He pointed at Loki with a grin, as if to say Loki had been right. Before Odin died, Thor had been told to listen to the Sorcerer Supreme. He had seen Leon in action, the way he had broken the frost giant host, the heat vision that crushed the ancient winter casket. Thor raised his voice, dropping any royal reserve. "Sorcerer Supreme, please, help us. Lock Hela in Helheim, or anywhere else, even make her a minor." Leon finally understood. Thor was blunt, straightforward to the core. There had been no need for illusions for these two brothers. "All right," Leon said calmly, looking at Hela kneeling before him. Hela finally took notice of the man and frowned, seeing nothing remarkable, yet a cold unease crept over her. Thor, half hiding behind Leon like an overprotective dog, summoned Mjolnir and brandished it. Hela's contempt flared. "Sorcerer Supreme? Humph, how absurd. It's a joke that the god king of Asgard would ask a Midgard barbarian for help," she spat, then whirled on the warrior crowd. "You actually accept such an idiot as your king? Are you all fools?" Her words found no sympathy. The Asgardians had not lived long enough to see Odin at his height, but they had seen Leon's power. They had no quarrel with Thor asking aid of the sorcerers. If anything, many quietly welcomed it. "Isn't it too little to simply lock her back in Helheim?" Leon said. Thor blinked. "Then where?" "Recall when Odin sent Loki to Midgard for training? Did he not grow there?" Leon reached forward and, to the shock of all, plucked the dark crown from Hela's head. Loki, not far away, stiffened as though he had been waiting for that moment. A hard light came into his eyes. Leon held the crown lightly and said, "How can one who scorns life be fit to be the god of death? Even death itself treats all beings equally." He paused, then spoke in a measured voice. "In Odin's name, I revoke all of Hela's authority." Hela laughed scornfully. "What are you babbling? You, invoking Odin? You." The crown pulsed in Leon's hands. Hela, still kneeling, felt a cold dread. My power is leaving me. This can't be. I am Hela, the god of death. In Asgard, my strength is limitless." "It's not impossible," Leon said, then corrected himself, remembering the change in rulership. "The current god king is Thor. In Thor's name, I banish you from Asgard. Go, remain upon Midgard." A shaft of light, the Bifrost, descended and enveloped Hela. Her screams echoed as the bridge carried her away to a distant point on Earth. With a flick of his wrist, Leon sent the crown spinning into the Bifrost, and it vanished along with Hela's fading cries. Loki's fists clenched. "Good, let that woman learn what it means to be mortal." Thor stood dumbfounded beside Leon. Wait. Sorcerer Supreme, you can strip her of power like that? How is this possible?" Thor felt the memory of something strange, a surge of divine power he had not consciously called upon. Before he could react, it had been harnessed and used by Leon. Even if Thor had unlocked all his strength, the feat Leon had performed seemed impossible, yet it had been done with a fraction of the power. And why could the Sorcerer Supreme wield Thor's divine authority so directly? A single thought struck Thor with cold certainty. Perhaps Leon was Odin in disguise. Chapter 545. Another collision. It wasn't just Thor who was baffled. Not even Shen Loki, the Nine Realms' foremost sorcerer, nor anyone else present knew how Leon had done it. Only Queen Frigga stared at him in stunned disbelief. "That was words becoming reality, wasn't it?" she whispered, pulling Loki toward Leon. Slowly, she explained, "Legends say that the most mysterious gods in the universe, because of their immense power and authority, can change the rules of the world with even a single word. Mr. Leon didn't use any magic just now. He only spoke his decision, and the world changed to match it." Leon smiled and nodded, offering no correction. During the ritual to banish Hela, he hadn't used a shred of power. He had simply declared his judgment aloud, and reality had bent to it. It truly had been words made flesh. Frigga still looked at him as if she could scarcely believe it. The others, hearing her explanation, regarded Leon with something like worship. Most of those present were gods, powerful beings, but next to Leon, they seemed no more significant than ants. At last, Frigga bowed to him in gratitude. "Thank you for everything you've done for Asgard." "You're welcome," Leon replied. "Consider it interest for returning the artifact past its due date." He waved a hand. "Besides, Odin handed me the entire treasury, so I couldn't do nothing." Thor immediately hefted Mjolnir and pointed off toward the palace vault. "Treasury? The treasury is over there, Sorcerer Supreme. I'll go with you. Take whatever you want." With an invitation so warmly offered by the foolish heir to a fortune, Leon couldn't refuse. The group went in a grand procession to the treasury. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Bifrost had spit Hela and her crown out near a small town in New Mexico. The Men in Black, the unit charged with defending Earth from extraterrestrial threats, detected the anomaly and rushed in. They sealed the crater that the crown had gouged into the ground and set up a quarantine. Late that night, Hela staged a breakout. She let herself be subdued by the Men in Black, feigning weakness, and begged to be allowed near the crown. Once they escorted her to it, she laughed and grabbed the crown's spikes, planning to take back her power and enslave the ignorant humans around her. But where the crown had once been feather-light in her hands, it now felt like 1,000 pounds. No matter how she strained, she could not move it an inch. Devoid of any deep compassion, she could not wear it as she had before. Kneeling in the rain, she cried to the empty sky, "No!" The Men in Black hauled her away and processed her into the detention center for illegal extraterrestrial immigrants. A few days later, the sorcerers, having enjoyed the palace drama and Thor's theatrics for several days, returned to Earth. Loki came back with them. Although he had recovered his divine power, he couldn't bear to abandon the life he'd built on Earth. In his estimation, humans simply couldn't live without him. His fans adored his long legs, his height, and that magnetic voice. To keep them happy, he needed to shoot 2 films a year. So, not long after returning, Loki began planning his next movie, Shen Loki, Saving Ragnarok. He even convinced the Men in Black to release Hela so she could play the villain. Now stripped of divinity and reduced to a mortal, Hela had little choice but to follow Loki, defiant but dependent, into a paycheck. In the film, she was, predictably, defeated by Loki teamed up with Superman. Weeks passed. Leon had little interest in Hela's terrestrial career and was at the Sorcerer Academy presenting scholarships funded by the headmaster's endowment. He hadn't visited the academy in 3 years, so 3 years' worth of recipients had accumulated. The first was Shirley. The second was a chubby boy named Ned, once supposed to be Little Spider's best friend, recruited into the academy 3 years prior. The third was a young woman named Shafika, from the family Leon had saved in Afghanistan years ago. Leon awarded each of them a $1 million scholarship. At their requests, he arranged special magic tutoring for Ned, listened to Shafika give a solemn, tearful thanks for saving her family, and ruffled Shirley's hair. Shirley was 19 now and had the audacity to make an immodest request during her speech, so Leon decided to take her home and give her a proper scolding. But when he opened the portal, he paused. "Why aren't you moving? Hurry up! Aren't you going to punish me?" Shirley tugged his arm, her cheeks flushed. Leon lowered her head and, speechless, shoved her into the portal. "Wait at home for now. I still have something to do." He closed the portal, stepped outside his universe, and the sight stopped him cold. Behind him hung his S-universe. Ahead, a huge universe bubble rotated slowly toward him. The 2 universes were converging, an impact unavoidable. Leon was certain this collision wasn't the work of Doctor Strange. His Doctor Strange back home was still hopelessly addicted to online games. He didn't have the capability to cause a world collision. So is this another collision caused by a timeline contraction? Leon wondered, frowning. He remembered the earlier timeline contraction had been traced to an obliviate spell cast by the main universe's Doctor Strange. Something about it had always felt off. This time, he decided not to shove the approaching universe away. He would let them draw closer so he could observe the collision and trace the true cause. Hovering outside his universe, he waited, and he didn't forget to warn the heroes on Earth to remain calm until the collision finished. Already, from both sides, faint shadows of the other Earth's features began to bleed through. On the S-Universe's Earth, Tony had gathered the Avengers in Avengers Tower. "I didn't expect a collision here too," he said, "but we don't have a Doctor Strange." Dr. Banner looked puzzled. Everyone now agreed Doctor Strange was trouble, but they each knew the Strange they had, still doing surgery, still wrapped up in online games. "Maybe there's another cause," Tony said, voice steady. "Don't worry, Leon said he'll handle it." Captain America pointed upward. "Shouldn't we try to communicate with the other side, tell them not to panic?" "Okay, Jarvis, attempt contact with the Earth on the other side." "Yes, sir," Jarvis replied. Chapter 546, Shen Loki, the God King on Earth. Jarvis's main body, donned in the Infinity War armor, remained in Hell. What was operating on Earth now was only a sub-body, a fragment of his consciousness. Using the Avengers satellites, that fragment of Jarvis quickly probed the other Earth. He locked onto rulers and heroes there and began relaying what had changed between the two worlds. Soon, Jarvis had a report for Tony. "The Earth on the other side isn't an offshoot of the sacred timeline," he said. "It's a world of mutants. I've seen their records in the TVA. Professor Xavier is there. He's a good man. He's promised to help calm its people." Tony nodded. "A mutant's world? If Professor X is handling it, we don't have to step in." Tony had learned about Professor X from comics, telekinetic, telepathic, an influential member of the Illuminati. When people panicked, Xavier could be the steadying force. Pietro let out a disappointed sigh. "So the worlds colliding is just going to be peaceful? That's boring. Like the last time we went to the main world, I didn't even need to move." Banner patted Pietro's shoulder. "Don't say that. This is the best possible outcome, Pietro. Fighting isn't always the answer." "Oh, really? Tell that to the big guy inside you. He seems to solve things by punching them," Pietro smirked. They waited in the tower while the convergence progressed. Leon had guaranteed there'd be no problem, and because of that reassurance, they were relaxed, even as the other Earth crept closer in the sky. "If Leon hadn't said everything would be okay, I'd be freaking out," Hawkeye admitted. The other planet's bulk was close enough to make out surface features. Its shadow alone could inspire megalophobia. Small disturbances were already starting in some places. Had Leon not issued a global warning, widespread panic might have followed. "Maybe we should go out and show our faces," Tony suggested. "Give people confidence." Tony's suit folded onto him and then sprang open. "Cap, give a broadcast. I'll do a world tour. The rest of you, stay put. You're the not-so-famous crowd." Pietro bristled first. "Hey, street hero Quicksilver has a great rep and merch that sells like crazy." "Heh, a mortal's reputation," Loki murmured. The Asgardian pushed back his chair and stood up. "Don't you think I'm the most prestigious person in your little Earth hero roster?" He adjusted his sleeve and, half joking, half serious, shoved Captain America aside as Steve moved to prepare a broadcast. For a moment, the others considered Loki's claim and couldn't deny it. Loki's films were blockbusters. His publicity was relentless. More people on Earth recognized Loki's face than Cap's. With a practiced motion, he took over the conference room's central computer and switched the desktop hologram to a streaming interface. He launched a live broadcast. "Long time no see, my subjects," Loki proclaimed, spreading his arms. He wore the regal theatrics of a king. The live feed exploded. Virtual gifts flooded the screen. Donation alerts stacked like a coronation. The chat became a chorus of tributes to the God King. For a moment, Loki seemed transformed, more radiant than any time in Asgard. The Avengers exchanged looks. This was a side of Loki none of them had seen before. Only Hela, sitting in the corner, rolled her eyes. She'd grown used to his theatrics. Fans praised him as if he were a monarch. Loki promised calm. As God King, he would resolve the crisis, he said, working together with Superman. The chat overflowed with adulation. Jarvis amplified the stream, pushing it to public channels and huge advertising screens in cities. Loki's voice began to be the voice everyone heard. Tony, flying through city after city to make appearances, noticed that Loki's livestream was being played everywhere. He gritted his teeth and radioed the tower. "You actually let an alien Bambi soothe the masses? Seriously?" Loki, mid-broadcast, smiled coyly. "Bow down to your God King, my subjects." Another tidal wave of gifts and comments poured in. "Bow down to my king." The Avengers fell silent. Tony, maybe you should come back, Banner said mildly. You don't need to be on the streets anymore. Tony was stubborn. No way. Compared to Bambi, Earth needs me out there more. So he stayed out, darting through skyscraper valleys and hovering over plazas. When Tony unmasked and smiled for the crowds, people visibly relaxed. It wasn't just reverence. Seeing the planet's richest man stay and face the crisis sent a message. Things weren't yet beyond hope. When he finally returned and his armor retracted into his chest, Tony strode into the conference room. Jarvis, calculate whose calming effect is better, Bambi's or mine. Glad to assist, sir. Sir, an unexpected situation has arisen, Jarvis replied. What is it? Tony asked. In the other Earth, several fighter jets are flying toward us, Jarvis said. They've cut external communications and won't respond to attempts at contact. Cap frowned. Jets approaching without communication. What are they trying to do? Any unannounced military action by an ally can be treated as betrayal in wartime, Carter said. Are they saying these jets might be hostile? But why? Banner walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked up at the other Earth, now hauntingly close. He finally understood the other side's urgency. If you saw another planet looming above you and didn't know who it was or what they intended, waiting could be suicide. He thought of the dark forest theory from the three-body problem. When two hunters don't understand one another, the one who shoots first survives. They might be here to blow up our Earth, he said, the words tumbling out. Banner spun and raised his voice. Everyone, we have to stop those jets. They could be trying to. He didn't get to finish. A sudden, overwhelming psychic presence surged down from the sky and flooded the minds of everyone on Earth. An enormous mental assault that stole breath and thought alike. It was Professor X. He was aboard those incoming jets, and he had just locked on to humanity's minds. Chapter 547, Mutants vs. Avengers. Ah! Banner doubled over, clutching his skull as pain hammered through his head. Green began to creep up his neck, and from deep in his chest a bestial roar built until the Hulk pushed for release. Around him, everyone felt their minds grow heavy, consciousness blurring. Professor X's psychic reach had swept across the planet. He wasn't trying to kill so much as to control. With Cerebro amplifying him, ordinary humans had no defense. Only the non-humans and those with unusual minds could resist. Get out of here, Wanda cried. Scarlet energy erupted from Avengers Tower, a tide of chaos magic sweeping out in a crimson shockwave. The conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows shattered and then reformed as a cascade of water droplets. Enveloped in red light, Wanda hurtled out of the tower. Millions, billions of people across the globe registered a single, echoing scream as Wanda shoved herself into the psychic web. She reached for Xavier's mind through the distance. His psychic world was a blinding white place, and she began to flood it with scarlet. Inside a fighter jet miles above the city, Professor X screamed, hands clutching his temples as she pressed in. Just as she was about to take over his inner world, another psychic presence slammed into hers, an aura that matched chaos magic itself. Layered on top of Xavier's telepathy, it pushed back and stalled Wanda. At the same moment, metal all over New York began to move. Rebar, girders, concrete reinforced steel, entire bridges, fragments of buildings. It all rose and charged at Wanda as if the city itself had become a weapon. The surge was overwhelming. It felt as though reality had marshaled everything metal within range to crush her. Wanda had to loosen her assault on Xavier. She looked out at that tide of steel and stone, and, with a single, almost casual tap of her finger, sent ripples of chaos magic through the oncoming mass. The towering wreckage folded back into its original form in an instant. People who had been crushed reassembled whole. Her reality-warping ability, nearly like reversing time in a focused bubble, stunned whoever was controlling the metal. The metal weaponizer struck again from farther away. Wanda readied herself to meet both psychic and physical threats when Tony and the others finally burst onto the scene. "Leave the one controlling metal to me," Tony radioed, and shot up into the sky. Wanda glanced at the gold and red streak of Iron Man and wondered briefly why he would personally engage an enemy who mastered metal. She didn't have long to speculate. Diana and Kara arrived in the air as well, giving her a momentary relief. Then Tony, after a single blazing shot, was brutally ripped apart, his nanotech armor torn limb from limb. The metal obeyed its new master. It flew from Tony's suit toward him like swarms of knives. Magneto hovered above the city, a sneer on his face. From his vantage, these visitors clearly didn't understand the terror of magnetism. Tony laughed even as he fell. "Jarvis, detonate those nanometals," he ordered. Magneto had tugged the nanomaterials into his control, but Tony had the last word. Jarvis triggered the tiny power cells embedded in the suit. Miniature explosions bloomed along the stolen metal. Sky turned red with fire. Magneto's body was scorched and sent tumbling. A purple teleportation ring blinked open beneath him, sending his charred form down to the ground. With Magneto's fate uncertain, the fighters on that jet seemed thrown into confusion. Purple portals continued to flash, teleportation doors sending several people from the disabled jet down to street level. Blink's work. Kara, meanwhile, ripped through the remaining fighter jets with twin beams of heat vision, reducing them to wreckage. On the ground, Jarvis had already identified most of the mutants. Tony, having fitted a fresh arc reactor and a new suit, barked orders as he dove back into the fight. "Jarvis, scan those mutants, match them to every database we've got, and send their dossiers to everyone. Also, activate the armor biofield." He muttered the next part under his breath as he streaked toward Kitty Pryde and Blink, two targets that could wreck the Avengers' formations. "When we get back, research anti-magnetic armor. First thing, develop carbon nanotube composites that don't respond to magnetism." The so-called armor biofield was Tony's own compromise, a defensive layer born of biofield research and the alien tech lessons gleaned from encounters with Superman-level threats. It wasn't a perfect biofield, but it isolated hostile influences enough to keep him functioning, and it was better than nothing. Captain America, Hawkeye, Sharon Carter, and others surged into the fray, meeting mutant forces on the streets. Cyclops squared off against Hawkeye. Cap and Wolverine were locked in brutal hand-to-hand. Kitty and Blink proved slippery. Phase and portal attacks made them high-priority targets. Moments later, Magneto, having apparently recovered, returned to the air, metal bending around him like an armor. Storm rode in beside him, clouds and lightning answering her will. And trailing behind, immense and inevitable, was Apocalypse himself. Tony's HUD flagged the new arrivals. He came out of a run and stared up through his faceplate as the data scrolled past. "These mutants include Apocalypse?" he said aloud, disbelief cracking his voice. Chapter 5 and 48, The Mutant Earth's Experience. Apocalypse was a mutant who had lived since ancient times, mastering a vast array of powers. Any normal universe's Avengers would face total annihilation if they met him. But the Avengers of this universe were anything but ordinary. "Looks like I'll have to get serious." Tony tapped his chest. The armor retracted like liquid and then reformed, his strongest nano anti-Superman armor expanding outward. The golden red plating sealed over his limbs, and his palms and chest flared with a sunlight glow. He spun in the air, sure this was the moment his suit would turn the tide. Then Diana descended from the sky. With a single strike, she cleaved Apocalypse in two. A terrifying divine power seared through the wound, ancient blood spraying like rain. She withdrew her sword, and with a spin and a strike that blurred the air, struck again, this time toward Magneto. The cold gleam of the God-Killer sword flashed in the shadow cast by another Earth. A clean horizontal slash followed. Magneto and the Storm who had been behind him were both cut in half at the waist. "Shit," Tony muttered, stunned. The thrusters in his armor, just about to spool to full power, had to shut down. On the ground, Magneto's fall had enraged the other mutants. They were furious and ready to counterattack. Tony searched for a target and charged toward Blink and Shadowcat, who had been on the field. Someone beat him to it. Kara's heat vision outpaced him, tearing the ground apart and turning it to molten slag, incinerating most of the mutants instantly. Even those who Blink teleported away from were caught by Kara's speed. She closed the distance and killed them with a single, devastating punch. The difference in power was overwhelming. Tony realized there was neither time nor need for him to act. Diana and Kara were operating on a completely different level from everyone else on this Earth. Were they ever this strong before? Even during the fight with Darkseid, they didn't move like this, did they? Tony muttered. Jarvis's calm voice provided an answer. "Sir, comparing current performance with historical data, Miss Prince's speed and strength are approximately 13 times greater than before. Miss Kara Zor-El is about 21 times stronger. Miss Wanda shows no single outstanding physical increase, but her reality modification effects have improved. Tony's eyes widened. How did they get this much stronger? Wait, could Leon have helped them? Possibly, sir, Jarvis replied. If you wish to increase your capabilities quickly, you might inquire with young Master Leon. What? Ask Leon? No way, he'd be proud as a peacock. Tony immediately refused, but the suggestion tugged at him. When Leon returns, Jarvis, you ask him. You're the butler. Asking after him is standard. Yes, sir. Jarvis never refused Tony outright. He only delivered barbed little taunts at opportune moments. I will inform young Master Leon that you feel neglected and wronged. Wait, wronged? I'm not. Tony's face twitched, but Jarvis cut him off on cue. Sir, the remaining mutants on the ground have surrendered. You should rendezvous with the others. After Diana and Kara's demonstrations of power, the mutants' morale collapsed. Pietro managed to take care of the mutant Quicksilver, the two circling New York at hundreds of Mach, until this universe's Pietro, who'd undergone physical enhancements and Leon's special training, proved superior. Banner became the Hulk and smashed the mutant side's red tank. After successive defeats, the rest of the mutants had no chance to escape. Wanda completely shattered Professor X's mental defenses. The remaining mutants finally gave up. In the protective ring formed by Wolverine and the others, Professor X and Jean Grey lay unconscious, blood leaking from the corners of their eyes and nostrils. That was the final blow that broke Wolverine's will. Minutes later, the Avengers assembled on the ground. The invaders from the other Earth were bound with vibranium handcuffs and lay subdued. Wolverine sat close to Professor X and Jean Grey. Beside them was a bomb wrapped in high-density metal. The two remained out cold. Wolverine looked utterly defeated. Don't you have anything to say? You invade an Earth without communicating, prepare to blow up the whole planet, and now you're silent? Tony deactivated his armor and looked down at him. Wolverine said nothing. His eyes were dull, an expression of equal parts despair and relief. His refusal to speak made the Avengers uneasy. Hawkeye suggested, should I take him into the woods and interrogate him? As a former senior S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Hawkeye knew interrogation, and he was good at it. Wanda raised her hand to stop him. I already saw why, she said. I went into Professor X's mind world. There's no need to interrogate. So what was it? Why did they want to destroy an entire world? Captain America asked, incredulous. They're heroes. Their determination to kill billions makes no sense. This was not their first clash with other Earths, Wanda said. Before they encountered us, they had already destroyed 4 planets. 4 Earths? All destroyed? The other Avengers stared at Wolverine, seeking confirmation. He closed his eyes in pain. If he could, he would not have listened to Wanda's recounting, but Wanda continued. When the first collision happened, their society was still fractured. Mutants and humans were in irreconcilable conflict, and their forces were split into many factions. They were forced to unite to try to weather the collision threat and to coordinate with another Earth for a solution. But they found none, even up until the eve of collision. Someone proposed destroying the other Earth. The X-Men strongly objected, but Magneto and his allies directly acted with various governments. They brought in massive numbers of Sentinel robots and compressed bombs and sent them to the other Earth. They massacred that Earth's Avengers and buried the bombs underground. In the end, they succeeded. The other Earth turned to cosmic dust. Their own Earth survived. Enraged, parts of the X-Men even attacked Magneto's forces afterward to question him. Unfortunately, the first collision crisis ended, and then the second one came right on its heels. Chapter 5 and 49, A Crazy World. This other Earth is also a mutant world, Wanda said. So without the X-Men's help, Magneto and the others couldn't break through its defenses quickly. They, Magneto, the White Queen, and various factions, asked Professor X to step in, she continued. Their reason was simple, to protect their own Earth and billions of lives. In the end, Professor X agreed, but he decided that after destroying the other Earth, he would atone with death. Things got worse. After the second collision ended, a third came quickly. Once people broke their moral bottom line, they did it again. The X-Men joined the operation to destroy that third Earth. That other world was powerful, Thanos with 4 Infinity Stones. They awakened Apocalypse and together destroyed that Earth. By the time the fourth collision came, they were all monsters, carrying the blood debt of tens of billions of souls. Magneto, Professor X, everyone had completely lost their limits. Even Professor X no longer hesitated to destroy another Earth. Wanda paused, voice heavy. When our current collision, the fifth, happened, Professor X told Jarvis he'd wait until the end of the crisis. In truth, they were already mobilizing to break into our world. Their plan was to control every human, then detonate the Earth's core. Wanda's explanation of the mutant Earth's descent into atrocity left the Avengers silent. Captain America and Carter stared at the mutants on the ground, at once butcherous and pitiable, murderous, yet driven by a desperate will to survive. Tony couldn't help imagining himself and the Avengers in the mutant Earth's place. If S-Earth didn't have Leon, what would they have done facing repeated world collisions? He remembered how everyone had acted during their last visit to the main universe. Captain America would never have agreed to destroy another world. As for Tony, could he have resisted? The Infinity Stones might shove a world away for a time, but if collisions kept coming, would the stones still solve anything? Could he himself become a monster like these mutants? A chill ran through him. He found himself looking at Wolverine with a new, guilty sympathy. So, what do we do with them? Send them back? Tony finally asked, breaking the silence. Nobody had an answer. These mutants were guilty of monstrous crimes, hundreds of millions of deaths, no matter how you split the blame, yet everything they'd done had been to survive. Among the Avengers, only Captain America could say for certain he wouldn't do the same under the same pressures. In the heavy quiet, Wolverine scoffed. He rolled over, from prone to his back, and, under the Avengers' watching eyes, stared at the shadow of his own Earth hanging in the sky. A bitter, mocking expression crossed his face, but beneath it was raw, naked pain and a strange relief. "Kill us. Kill all of us," Logan said. "This world's gone crazy. We're all going crazy. I've seen the cruelty of war, but even the meat grinder of a battlefield isn't as insane as this. This place forces you out of being human. Kill me. Kill that old man. Kill that beautiful woman. Kill those bastards. Kill them all. If Professor knew he was going to be killed, he'd be glad. And Jean doesn't want to live. She's in pain every day. I see her at night, smoking, burning her palm with a cigarette. She used to hate smoke more than anything. Those other bastards, death would be better for them than living. Dead, it all ends. No more waking from nightmares. No more endless wails of spirits. Come on, kill us. Aren't you some damn Avengers? I'm begging you, do it." Maybe because he really wanted to die, Wolverine poured it all out in one breath. His eyes, usually black, looked like dust-clouded glass marbles as he stared up at the other Earth. Those lenses reflected a pain that felt like 10,000 blades. The Avengers' faces tightened. Tony wanted to answer, but his chest was too heavy. Carter, voice flat, finally said, "Do it. If they return to their Earth now, only more suffering will follow. It will cause more deaths." She drew a Glock and fired at several of the ordinary-looking mutants. Wanda sighed and raised her hand. Scarlet chaos magic flared and spread, surrounding them. When the red energy vanished, the mutants had turned into translucent bubbles that drifted up and away, carrying them back to their Earth. Leon said something about an unimaginable crisis brewing in the multiverse, Tony said, watching the bubbles until they disappeared. His voice was somber. Maybe these world collisions are part of that crisis. "We should be grateful we still have Leon," he added, "but we need to prepare for whatever else could threaten Earth." The others nodded. Hela, once a goddess of death and now mortal, stood quietly, staring at the sky. She felt the arrogance of millennia peeling away. Thousands of years ago, when she and Odin conquered realms, they'd never imagined a multiversal threat like this. Looking at the other Earth, her certainty was suddenly hollowed. Outside the universe, Leon's gaze moved slowly between the two worlds. He probed through the noise of interfering forces, searching for the true cause of the collisions. As a string of bubbles rose from S-Earth toward the mutant Earth, Leon reached out and snatched a black fire that was drifting between the universes. The flame was trapped in his palm. When he opened his hand, the fire unfurled into a black phoenix and beat its wings. He recognized it at once, a fragment of the Phoenix Force, likely from Jean Grey. After Jean's death, the fragment would seek a new host. Leon tucked the Black Phoenix away. I'll keep it for further study, he decided. He continued to watch timelines, causality, and the shifts in spacetime between the universes. He had known what the mutant Earth had done the moment he first observed it. That was why he had allowed those mutants to reach S-Earth, because the sense of urgency had to be shared. What could create more pressure to get stronger faster than a group of people already carrying the guilt of billions of deaths from repeated world collisions? Tony and the others needed that urgency as much as anyone. Chapter 550, Why Worlds Collide. Leon kept watching the collision of the two universes. Even though the mutant world had thrown more fleets and powered individuals into the fight, he paid little attention. Tony had already fought wars between cosmic civilizations in the three-body world. A fleet from a parallel Earth was barely worth his concern. The waves of fighter jets pouring into S-Earth were like locusts flying into insecticide. One after another, they were swallowed by fire. The sky over S-Earth filled with fiery explosions. The mutant world's invasion was snuffed out almost as soon as it began. A few superpowered survivors might have escaped the blasts, but they couldn't get away from Diana and Kara's pursuit. The Avengers had not failed to try to dissuade the mutant Earth. They'd repeatedly explained and reassured the other side, insisting the two worlds could safely ride out the collision crisis. The mutant Earth wouldn't listen. Or rather, they dared not believe it. They had already experienced 4 world collisions, seen 4 Earths and 4 universes destroyed, and they wouldn't gamble. This was a battle for survival, the life or death of an entire planet, maybe an entire universe. Most of the Avengers were feeling the ruthlessness of the multiverse for the first time. Tony, freshly back from the three-body universe, felt it most keenly. The mutant Earth's attacks didn't let up. The fiery explosions in the sky above S-Earth continued, perhaps until every fighter jet on the mutant side had been expended and every mutant able to fight lay dead, until the attackers were utterly desperate. Then, at a certain point, Leon found the clue he had been searching for. He pushed the two universes apart, giving S-Earth and mutant Earth some distance again. The attacks from the mutant Earth stopped. On S-Earth, under a sky still stained red with smoke, the Avengers watched. Some of them sat on the grass in stunned silence. Others stood, too shaken by the multiverse's madness to calm down quickly. Everyone felt the urgency of what they'd witnessed. Under Captain America and Tony's orders, they dispersed to comfort and help the survivors. The grateful smiles of people who had lived through the catastrophe eased the Avengers' conflicting emotions a little. But the mutant world's ferocity left a seed of alarm in all of them. Outside the universe, Leon felt lighter. He'd finally found the reason for the recurring world collisions. Thanks to my universe's peculiarities, I finally see the cause, he said to himself. It really is a timeline problem, and Doctor Strange probably didn't start it. Leon had already guessed the collisions had something to do with timelines. Every universe's timeline wasn't a single straight line. It branched like a tree, spawning infinite alternate threads. When two universes collided, it was actually two branches of time intersecting. The branches interfered with each other, and their own futures splintered into chaos, tangling together. That made it hard to pinpoint where things first went wrong. Part of the difficulty was that Leon usually didn't let the collisions play out to the end. Part of it was that, by the time the worlds met, their timelines were already knotted. This time was different because one of the colliding worlds was Leon's own, the 199999 universe where he now lived. That universe's timeline was unusual. While most universes spawned countless branches, this one had been a straight line from the moment Leon appeared in the MCU. In the year he arrived, this universe split off from the main universe and formed its own timeline, and because of Leon's uniqueness, it produced no branches at first. Every time Leon traveled between worlds and returned, that timeline was overwritten, generating a new future. Now, with his power expanded to the multiversal level, he'd partially stepped outside the MCU timeline's constraints, and the future of his universe's line was getting blurrier. So where past collisions had been a mass of indistinct, entangled timelines stretching downstream, this collision, because it involved Leon's straighter, clearer timeline, made the influencing factors much easier to discern. As the two universes approached, Leon parsed space, time, reality, and every other variable. In his perception, the past and future of the two universes resolved into one straight timeline and one chaotic, snarled timeline. Even though the mutant universe's timelines still went wildly chaotic on impact, one problem rose clearly above the rest. Leon's vision tracked upstream. He pushed the mutant universe away and turned his attention to the source of his own universe's timeline. The entire multiverse's timelines form a vast world tree, and at the end of time sits Shen-Loki, at the center where all timelines converge. The core of that tree is the sacred timeline, from which most universes extend. But there are other principal branches as well, independent main timelines like the Sony Spider-Man universe or Fox's X-Men universe. Those main branches are supposed to be distinct. Now Leon saw them squeezed together, packed like bamboo shoots. The upstream main branches of countless timelines were colliding and contracting. That was the real problem. On the scale of the multiverse, even a tiny change at the source of time can cascade into huge, unpredictable effects. The contraction among the main time branches was compressing the downstream timelines, the branches that unfurl like a tree, and forcing them to collide. It was like a string of pressure-activated landmines that used to be spaced apart. Now the source has converged, and the whole string is detonating in a chain reaction. No wonder world collisions are getting more frequent, Leon murmured, his face grim. He realized now that Doctor Strange's world-hopping and the obliviate spell in the main universe were only local catalysts, triggers in specific places. The true cause was far deeper, a contraction at the very source of the timelines. Chapter 551, Has the Time Variance Authority Fallen? Who did this? The Beyonder? Shen-Loki? Why isn't the Time Variance Authority responding at all? Leon had found the real cause of the world collision, but new doubts had sprung up. Before he was certain, he had a long list of suspects. Now that the source was narrowed down, the list shrank drastically, because only a handful of beings in the multiverse cinematic universe could tamper with the main timeline. Pinning down the guilty one, however, was still difficult. Leon's thoughts turned again to the Time Variance Authority. If the main timeline was in trouble, wouldn't the TVA be the first to notice and the first to react? Yet no one from the TVA had come for help. So, maybe the Time Variance Authority itself has a problem. He suspected the TVA had a major crisis. He pulled out the time pad that had been gathering dust. Once a cutting-edge device of chronal engineering, it now behaved like a faulty appliance, repeatedly flashing messages about losing connection with its host. He tried to open a portal to the TVA, but the pad showed no response. As I thought, the time pad's useless. Not surprised, Leon stowed the pad away and prepared to step into the time stream toward the TVA. Then he paused. I'll bring Jarvis with me. In Mephisto's hell, Jarvis, Darkstrange, and a host of mages stood ready, waiting for Mephisto to open a spatial gate so they could strike another Hell Lord. Leon's sudden appearance startled them. After he explained what he'd discovered, Jarvis was baffled. The TVA's in trouble. How is that possible, young master? Just before you came back, I connected to your subbody and pulled the latest intel from the TVA, Leon said. Jarvis frowned. As far as I know, the TVA is still doing its daily work maintaining multiversal stability. The world collision has been going on for a while. If the TVA were compromised, they'd have noticed. Leon's expression darkened. Jarvis, time can be both complicated and simple. For an organization outside of time, a single day for them can equal 100 million years in different universes, or just a second. To you, they contacted you only yesterday, he continued. But to them, your last contact might have been ages ago. He put a hand on Jarvis's shoulder. The TVA has undoubtedly encountered a major problem, but your subbody's reports confirm one thing for me. Jarvis blinked. What is that, young master? That the source of this multiversal collision is directly linked to the TVA, Leon said. Whoever caused this deliberately fabricated the illusion, especially for key figures like you, that the TVA was functioning normally. If I hadn't suddenly returned from other worlds and disrupted your future trajectory, Jarvis, that source might have let you keep receiving new messages from the subbody for a long time. Jarvis's eyes widened as realization hit. So the TVA might have fallen, but they're crucial to keeping the multiverse stable. If they've gone down, Leon cut him off. We don't know the outcome yet. No point speculating. First, we go to the TVA and see what actually happened. As Leon prepared to enter the TVA with Jarvis, Dark Strange, who had been listening, quickly stepped forward. Your Eminence, take me with you. I should be able to help. He laughed at himself. After all, many stranges are adept at destroying universes. Maybe I can sense something. Leon glared at him. You think another Dark Strange attacked the TVA to resurrect Klee? Dark Strange gave a bitter smile. That possibility can't be ruled out. If the old me had known about the TVA, I might have acted. Wherever there was a scapegoat in the multiverse cinematic universe, Doctor Strange variants often featured in the rumor list. Then let's go together, Leon said. The three of them stepped and slipped out of time. Jarvis and Dark Strange felt a blur and then found themselves inside a long corridor. It was dominated by orange, yellow, and off-white hues, with time motifs etched into the walls and floor tiles. Jarvis knew the place well. His sub-body had been stationed here for over 10 years, longer than he'd been in the S-universe. Yet the familiarity felt wrong. The corridor's tiles were cracked and pitted as if from fierce combat. The walls bore battle damage, splatter stains, knife marks, bullet holes, and impact dents. But there were no bodies. The passage led inwards to where lights flickered on and off in a slow, rhythmic pulse. The TVA here looked nothing like the neat institution outside the world. It resembled a haunted hospital from a horror game. Jarvis felt oddly unsettled. He'd worked with many people here. Casey, OB, Miss Minutes. They were colleagues. Now their workplace felt abandoned and violated. Dark Strange, by contrast, seemed slightly relieved. These battle marks aren't my style, he said. Maybe this has nothing to do with other versions of me. Leon nodded and kept moving deeper into the corridor. Jarvis spoke up, voice tight. Young Master, there's another problem. I can still use the Infinity Stones. Leon's steps faltered. The TVA had anti-magic systems that could be toggled on or off, and those systems covered artifacts like the Infinity Stones. If Jarvis could still access the stones, the TVA's anti-magic defenses were either deactivated or destroyed, which meant the Authority had likely fallen completely. The last time the TVA had disabled its anti-magic devices was before Shen Loki sat on the golden toilet at the end of time, when the entire multiverse teetered on destruction. Leon said nothing. He led them further in. The TVA was eerily silent. Apart from their footfalls, no sound answered them. Chapter 552, The One Who Destroyed the Time Variance Authority. The three of them walked down the corridor. The walls and floor were scarred and mottled. Every surface of the Time Variance Authority seemed broken. In the oppressive silence, their footsteps echoed in an empty rhythm. As lights flickered overhead, the three figures looked like ghosts passing through a tomb. Ordinary people would have been terrified, expecting some unspeakable horror to leap out from around the corner, but Liam, Jarvis, and Dark Strange were anything but ordinary. They were practiced, powerful, and unafraid. They moved from office to office, opening sealed or damaged doors. Inside were rows of cubicles, some wrecked, others almost intact. The one consistent detail was the absence of dust on any desk. That lack of dust did not mean the TVA had fallen recently. The Time Variance Authority existed outside of normal time. Decay and weathering didn't operate there. The TVA was vast, but the three of them swept through it quickly. No living person remained, not a single corpse. The place had the empty, uncanny quality of a horror story town evacuated overnight. Whatever happened here, it had not been a massacre. That was an important deduction. The invader had not gone about slaying everyone. Instead, the employees had likely been relocated, taken somewhere else rather than killed. Jarvis allowed himself a small, relieved breath. They reached the command center. The World Tree mural on the far wall was scarred and torn. The main control console was sparking and half-melted, its connection to the outside world severed. Liam, Jarvis, and Strange stood before the console. Where a branching map of the sacred timeline had once filled the central screen, there were now only flickering fragments. The invader deliberately cut off the TVA's connection to the outside, Jarvis observed. That suggests caution. A caution directed against TVA personnel who weren't here, people like you and young Master, Dark Strange added. If we'd been here earlier, perhaps they feared we could have stopped them. So they didn't consider themselves unstoppable. Jarvis continued, which means they may not be overwhelmingly powerful. Dark Strange nodded. Then if we can find them, we can fix this. The multiverse is enormous, Jarvis said. If they hid in some doomsday world, tracking them down could be impossible. You're wrong. Liam's voice cut in. He rested his hand on the console and shook his head. The main trunk of the timeline has already been disturbed. The invader's goal when entering the TVA was largely achieved. Finding him won't be the problem for me. The problem is repairing the changes to the main timeline, resolving the world collision crisis he set in motion. Jarvis and Strange exchanged looks. Liam's assessment landed hard. Finding the mastermind wouldn't by itself save the multiverse. It would only tell them how the catastrophe had been started. Young Master, Jarvis said after a moment of calculation, my sub-entity is stored in the TVA's internal network. It may not have been erased. If we can rebuild the TVA's data systems, we might recover it and learn what happened. We'll try, Liam said. He placed his palm on the console. The sparking died away. The hairline cracks and damaged circuits healed as if his touch smoothed them. Liam tapped a few icons. With a final whining snap, the main screen erupted back to life. An orange-yellow map of branching timelines reappeared. The TVA's tech had been restored. Liam began to run diagnostics. The picture was worse than they feared. The source of the timeline had contracted, and multiple worlds were already colliding. If left unchecked, the collision would tear the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe apart. Jarvis extended a data cable from his arm and plugged it into the console. Data poured into him like a flood. He worked quickly, sifting through corrupted files and remnants. After a few breaths, Jarvis shuddered, eyes widening in disbelief. I found something, he said. Did you recover your sub-entity? Dark Strange asked. It wasn't erased, Jarvis replied. It had hidden in the data remnants. I've merged with it. The invader deleted the TVA's data and destroyed their high-tech systems when he left, Jarvis continued. He didn't expect the sub-entity to survive hidden among the corrupted fragments. Dark Strange cocked his head. You said he. Do you mean another you or another me? Jarvis's expression was grim as he answered. Not another Strange. The invader was Dr. Doom. The name landed like a punch. Strange didn't have a deep memory of Doom, but Liam's face showed the reaction of someone who had suspected as much. Of course, Doom had always had an intellect and a face of purpose. He had been planning something catastrophic. Does your sub-entity have a record of what Doom did? Liam asked. Jarvis's fingers melted into a data interface and plunged into the console once more. The main screen filled with recovery footage, surveillance-style recordings. Jarvis narrated as the images played. Doom was consistent with the TVA's mission at first, he said. He was a high-performing operative, zealous about protecting the multiverse and relentless in hunting Kang variants. Every time the TVA found a trace of a Kang variant, Doom went after it himself. The footage showed Doom in action, efficient, ruthless. Jarvis continued, recent for us at least, the TVA traced a congregation of the Council of Kangs. Doom went to that location and annihilated them. Not a single one was left. The screen filled with a grim tableau, an arena-like chamber, hundreds of Kang variants, some standing in a ring, some screaming from the stands. Doom stood at the center, cold and absolute. The recording cut between his armor-clad, relentless slaughter and the horror of the variants as they were cut down. Liam watched the footage, jaw tightening. If Doom had wiped out the Council of Kangs, his motives were no longer simply enforcement of temporal order. Killing the Kangs had removed a counterbalance of power across the multiverse, perhaps a necessary one, and whatever Doom had done in the TVA itself had accelerated a collapse in the timeline structure. Jarvis's voice was steady but edged with something like sorrow. He cleared every trace, but my sub-entity survived in the data refuse. That's how we know. Dark Strange's fingers twined together. The command center hummed with the revived systems and the afterimage of the slaughter on the screen. They now had a clearer idea of the architect of the catastrophe. They also had a worse problem than they'd realized. The structural integrity of the timelines themselves was unsteady, and the solution would require more than vengeance. It would require rebuilding the main trunk of the sacred timeline before the collisions consumed everything. Chapter 553, That Man's Ambition. The Kangs howled like a pack of enraged apes, beating their chests and stamping their feet. A golden portal opened in the center of the Doom arena, and Dr. Doom stepped out, cloaked in green, his iron mask hiding whatever expression lay beneath. Yet when he turned to the shouting Kangs, the way his head tilted gave the illusion of a smile. At the sight of the uninvited guest, some Kangs panicked and tried to hide behind the audience stands. Most, however, roared in fury. They vastly outnumbered him. What had they to fear? A blue-skinned Kang raised an energy gun and advanced. Dr. Doom moved like a specter. Lightning magic crackled and spread across the arena. Missiles seemed to appear from nowhere, splitting into dozens of smaller warheads midair to home in on each Kang. Magic and machinery erupted together. The Kangs, triumphant cries turned to terrified screams. In the enormous arena, Dr. Doom slaughtered without mercy. Hundreds of Kang variants scattered like frightened monkeys. Some scrambled up the stands, others tried to squeeze beneath the low walls. Immortus Kang, one of the council's leaders, bellowed insults and charged, but within 30 seconds he too was running, clutching his head. He activated his temporal device to flee, only to find the arena's time sealed. All the Kangs were trapped and forced to face Doom's carnage. The screaming subsided into a dull, sharp chorus, then fell away. Silence swallowed the arena. Blood from the fallen Kang variants stained the barren ground in a thick, viscous tide. Dr. Doom stood on that crimson carpet, calm as a king, collecting the spoils of his victory. Outside the screen, Jarvis narrated. Dr. Doom, by his own hand, interrupted the crisis the Council of Kangs had dragged into the multiverse. But with that victory, all of the Kang's temporal technology fell into his possession. The Council could contend with the TVA only because of their varied time tech. The TVA itself was founded by a Kang who won a multiversal war hundreds of millions of years ago. With that technology, Dr. Doom could quite naturally stand against the TVA. His ambition was finally revealed. He used the TVA's convenience to secretly probe secrets across the multiverse. The betrayal occurred decades ago, at least as far as the TVA is concerned. One day decades back, when teams like Spider-Man's and the Deadpool Wolverine contingents were away from the TVA, Dr. Doom sealed the place off. He destroyed and dismantled the TVA's time systems. Those who resisted were grievously injured or knocked unconscious. Those who were not present were cut off from the TVA. He took with him the people who chose to follow him. Before leaving, he erased the memories of those he left behind and cast them out into the multiverse. The TVA floated lifeless, stranded outside of time, for decades. While Jarvis recited the TVA's destruction, the screen replayed the footage. The scale of Doom's temporal power stunned Dark Strange. Black Strange found it almost unbelievable. He betrayed the TVA and still managed to pull together so many followers? Black Strange scoffed. The footage showed that half of the TVA staff had left with Doom. Was this a rebellion or a recruitment drive? For an organization tasked with policing the multiverse, losing half its people to a single defection suggested catastrophic failure. Dark Strange couldn't help feeling the scenario had an almost absurd quality. Leon offered a calm explanation. It's not surprising. Doom has an unusual charisma. The goals he pursues aren't necessarily unjust from some perspectives. In other timelines, Doctor Strange might even be one of his lieutenants. Black Strange snapped. Impossible, Your Eminence. All Stranges are too proud to be anyone's subordinate. Leon tilted his head and smiled. Is that so? Aren't you my messenger right now? What's impossible about it? The conversation shifted back to the footage. Leon asked Jarvis, we know the TVA was destroyed, but why did the timelines begin to contract? How did Doom accomplish that? Jarvis shook his head. I don't know, young master. What I can say is this. The most important lead Doom investigated before his departure concerned a certain you-know-who, the one who once saved the TVA in the multiverse. In the archives, that individual appears as a Loki variant with a crucial connection to the multiversal timeline. Doom launched his rebellion after amassing extensive intelligence on that Loki. The footage neared its end. Dr. Doom opened a portal and led many TVA employees through it. He looked back once before stepping inside, as if bidding farewell to the past and declaring war on the future. Humans fall ill, and so does the world. This world is sick and should not be allowed to remain so, Doom said. Those so-called superheroes who claim to protect the world only make it sicker. To save the multiverse and countless worlds, everything must be torn down and rebuilt. All answers lie at the end of time, where everything ends and everything begins. Soon, very soon, I will seize that power and bring true peace to the multiverse. Then he turned and stepped into the portal. The video ended. Doctor Doom. Dark Strange stared at the screen a long time. He's obsessive. Whatever the end he seeks, he will drag the multiverse into the abyss to get it. Leon glanced at Black Strange with a faintly ironic expression, thinking how audacious it was for a corrupted Strange to call someone else obsessive. There's no doubt he's the architect behind the multiversal collisions, Leon said. As for how he did it, it's probably tied to the power he kept mentioning. Chapter 554, Plundering Power. After a short pause, Leon went on. Or to say it bluntly, Dr. Doom's ability to contract the main timelines is tied to Shen Loki, who sits at the end of time. Jarvis and Black Strange exchanged stunned looks. Shen Loki? You mean Loki, the god of mischief? A special variant? Black Strange asked, confused. Jarvis's ever-rational gaze clouded for a moment as he ran a quick mental calculation. He must mean the Loki who saved the Time Variance Authority, he said. If he's called Shen Loki, then for the multiverse, he's essentially a god. God? Black Strange's surprise was plain. In most universes, Loki was just a trickster god, hardly a cosmic arbiter. Yet Leon didn't contradict him, he only nodded. That's basically right. Leon summarized what he knew. Shen Loki was a time criminal created by the events around the blip, when the Avengers traveled through time to save the other half of the population. At that time, Kang the One Who Remains ran the Time Variance Authority. Back then, a time criminal was someone whose actions or existence deviated from the sacred timeline and caused branches to form. Shen Loki, because of the time-traveling Avengers, picked up a tesseract that wasn't his and fled. The TVA caught him. But as he dug deeper, he discovered the real truth about the TVA. In the end, at the end of time, he and another Loki, Sylvie, killed Kang the One Who Remains. With Kang gone, nothing held the uniqueness of the sacred timeline in place. History itself was overwritten by a new past. That didn't fix things. It started the multiverse's decay. When the timeline lost its uniqueness, the world began spawning countless new timelines and universes every moment. The TVA's temporal loom, its device for sorting timelines, couldn't stand that surge and collapsed. Timelines became chaotic, tangled, interfering, colliding. The multiverse was dying. At that point, Shen Loki mastered slipping through and reversing time. He tried everything. Every time the multiverse collapsed, he'd go back and try again. His time travel was true time travel. His reversals didn't create parallel worlds so much as overwrite prior histories. The multiverse died and was reborn over and over, and Shen Loki was reincarnated endlessly. He spent centuries in repeated lives learning every piece of TVA technology. But no method worked. Eventually, he understood that saving the world required sacrifice. He walked out of the TVA, went to the end of time, and sat on the temporal throne. He made his own body the loom, used his divine power to hold all the branches. He held every timeline, becoming the supreme deity who wove the multiverse's story. Our current multiverse exists because of Shen Loki. But it was a true sacrifice. He mastered all of time but could never step down. Leon looked at them and lowered his voice. Now, consider how vast the timelines of the entire multiverse are. To contract them at their source, even in my current state, would be extremely difficult. If Dr. Doom can contract the main timeline, that strongly implies he obtained Shen Loki's power. Hearing the story and Leon's inference, both Jarvis and Black Strange went pale. Black Strange couldn't hide his bewilderment. That is unimaginable, but how could it be possible? Jarvis, who had been quietly listening, offered another angle. Doom did collect temporal technology from the various Kangs. Perhaps he used that technology to defeat Shen Loki. Jarvis's processors began cycling through countless battle scenarios, but the computations were enormous. His optical sensors flushed red as he approached overheating. Based on Young Master's account, Kang the One Who Remains gathered technology from his variants and built the TVA. To an extent, Shen Loki's time control seems connected to that. Calculating the exact possibility that Doom wrested Shen Loki's power I lack crucial data. I cannot complete the probability analysis. Smoke of metaphorical strain seemed to pour off Jarvis. He shut down his calculation attempt. Black Strange immediately dismissed the idea. No need for calculation. It's impossible, Jarvis. One of them holds the time of the entire multiverse. The other has temporal tech from the Council of Kangs. They're not on the same level. Black Strange believed firmly that multiversal level power and the Kang's technology weren't comparable. He expected Leon, with his abstract divine perspective, to agree. Instead, Leon fixed him with a wry look. Your analysis is correct, under normal circumstances, but the world we're in is often abnormal. Often abnormal? What does that mean? Black Strange asked, stunned. Leon pointed at him. You're an example of abnormal. Tell me, what do you think the Eye Demon's power level is? Multiversal, Black Strange said without hesitation. Terrifying. And is it normal that you, back then, not even cosmic level, ate several of its tentacles and plundered its powers? Leon asked. Black Strange faltered. That doesn't seem unusual, does it? The arrogance was obvious. Black Strange considered his own plundering of the Eye Demon's abilities routine, while the idea that Dr. Doom could take Shen Loki's power struck him as absurdly impossible. Leon's meaning was clear. This world made a mockery of normal hierarchies. Some things that should never happen did happen. Some things that seemed inevitable did not. What do you call normal? Leon asked before he could stop himself. Strange, are you saying something's wrong? For me, Strange said, eyes alight as he recalled the plan. Devouring the eyeball demon's power was always destined to work once I made the proper preparations. I can precisely control the summoning array, he continued. Only the demon's tentacles were called forth. The moment they appeared, I could sever them with the array and devour them instantly. The whole procedure is exacting, with no room for error or interference. That's why I could devour the eyeball demon. Everything went according to plan. Strange smiled, calm and confident. Leon was silent for a moment. What you say makes a certain amount of sense, he allowed. Sense my foot, Leon thought, but he didn't burst the man's bubble. Instead, he pushed the argument in a different direction. Have you considered the possibility the eyeball demon was simply too lazy to bother with a weak sorcerer? Strange paused, frowning as he thought. It's possible, he admitted slowly, but I prepared thoroughly. I wouldn't have failed. All right. Leon didn't expect his subordinate to be so sure of himself. The confidence reminded him of a certain spiky mutant, but he didn't want to dampen Strange's morale. He steered the conversation toward Shen Loki and Doom. Dr. Doom is different. The eyeball demon wouldn't voluntarily let someone steal its power, Leon said. Shen Loki might not guard his time throne as if it were a simple treasure. Becoming the supreme deity of the timeline was a sacrifice, the sacred mission the other Lokis always talk about. He completed it when he gave himself up. Sitting on the throne, watching countless worlds play out and end, that might not be what he truly wanted. What he might want most now is a single moment of freedom, freedom not to be bound to the end of time. In my opinion, if Dr. Doom challenges Shen Loki, no matter how formidable those time technologies seem, he could actually seize the power. Leon's words hung between them. Strange considered it. If that's true, Doom could very well take the power, he agreed. So, if we find him, should we try to take time itself from him and fix the source of time ourselves? It's a boundless multiverse, Leon said. There are countless universes. Perhaps only I can find him. Jarvis sounded puzzled. But young master, that Loki sacrificed himself to save the multiverse. Why would he give his power to someone who's about to destroy it? Leon arched an eyebrow. Maybe Shen Loki believes Doom's destruction isn't true destruction. Who can say for sure what he intended? What do you want us to do next? Jarvis asked. Strange, you and Jarvis stay and repair the damaged equipment in the TVA, Leon ordered. The TVA's duties are critical. You two must try to locate the TVA staff scattered across the multiverse. If you can't find enough of them, pull sorcerers from Kamartaj to act as temporary staff. After that, scan for worlds at risk of colliding and report them to me. With a wave of his hand, the command center's systems snapped back to life. Leon stepped forward, beginning to merge with space. As for me, I think I know where Doom will be. I'll go find him and get to the bottom of this. His figure blurred, starting to dematerialize. Then an alarm in the newly repaired command center blared. A warning light flared, and the wall-mounted amplifiers began to broadcast the system's continuous emergency notification tone. Leon's form solidified again. The signal was an emergency call from a TVA field agent reporting a critical situation. None of them expected that as soon as the network was back online, someone would immediately try to contact the TVA, someone who'd been trying to reach them for a while. At Leon's signal, Jarvis pressed the connect button. A holographic projection filled the air. A slender, graceful blonde, Gwen Stacy, Spider-Woman of the Spider-Verse, and a TVA field agent. Her pink and white suit was torn along the arms, thighs, and chest. Beneath the rips were deep, scabbed wounds. She wasn't wearing her mask. Her blonde hair was mussed, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her face was tired, anxious, and ragged. Finally, connected, she breathed, relief and desperation mingling. B-15, are you there? Why were you disconnected? She cut herself off, eyes widening when she recognized the channel. Relief turned to astonishment. Leon, you're in the TVA? Oh my God, you're actually here. Gwen's excitement made her seem almost brighter. That's amazing. I'll come find you. No, can you come to our side? Slow down, Gwen. Tell us calmly. Something happened at the TVA while we were offline. Leon kept his voice steady to ground her. It's not a world collision, she said quickly. It's the inheritors, Morlun. You remember Morlun. He was killed by me, but now they've cloned him and he's after us, crossing in from another multiverse. And he's not alone. He's brought his family, his brothers and sisters. Please, you have to come now. Oh no, they're here again. I have to fight. Leon, we need you. Hurry. Her transmission cut off abruptly. Silence fell over the command center. Chapter 556, The Carnage of Morlun's Siblings. It had been a full year since Gwen had returned to her own universe after her last mission for the TVA. At first, she assumed her time pad was broken and that the TVA would find her soon. But months passed, and there was no sign of them. Gwen's spirits sank. She kept herself busy. She even quit the school band and lived in a quiet, restless fog. Then a villain from a parallel world showed up in the city. While stopping him, Gwen met someone from the Spider-Man Alliance. The Alliance served a role similar to the TVA. It existed to preserve the stability of the multiverse. But whereas the TVA oversaw countless universes and was staffed by a broad mix of beings, the Spider-Man Alliance was confined to the Sony Spider-Verse and comprised only spider-powered heroes from different worlds. Gwen had originally joined to hunt down the TVA and learn what had happened to it. She never found any answers. Still, as she ran missions alongside other spider heroes, she came to appreciate the Alliance's purpose. She spent months hopping between worlds, quelling anomalies and protecting lives, holding out hope that someday the TVA would turn up. Sometimes she wondered if everything she'd experienced with the TVA, the mutants, Wanda, and even Leon, had been a half-remembered dream. That thought tugged at her on every mission, and it left her distracted. Fortunately, most Alliance work involved tracking anomalies, villains who had slipped into other universes, and rounding them up. Difficult, sometimes dangerous, but generally manageable. Life settled into a quiet routine, and Gwen almost began to accept that the past year's events had been an impossible dream. Then Morlun came. Not the Morlun Leon had killed in Universe 1610, but one resurrected from some other part of the multiverse. He didn't come after Gwen at first. She remembered that clearly. She and Spider-Ham were on a mission in a parallel world when an abyssal portal opened beside him. Gwen yanked Spider-Ham away just in time, but Morlun poured out of the portal and tore off Spider-Ham's arm. The man, Devil, had slicked back black hair and a long dark mane flowing behind him. He hungrily devoured the severed limb, blood and muscle slick on his mouth. This is the taste, he crooned, savoring the flesh. Piglet and spider, what a delicious mix. He gnawed until only bone and shredded sinew remained, then tossed the carcass aside and stared, crimson-eyed, at Gwen and the mangled Spider-Ham. The intensity of that look sent ice through her bones. She remembered what Leon had warned her. Morlun belonged to the Inheritors, a family that fed on animal totems. Driven by a prophecy that a spider would destroy them, they hunted and devoured spider people without mercy. Against them, spider sense was useless. Caught by an inheritor, a spider would be eaten from flesh to soul until nothing remained. Gwen bit down on her lip to steel herself against the rising panic, then activated the Spider Alliance world-traveling wristband. She scooped up the bleeding spider ham and dove into the space-time tunnel, jumping blindly into another world. She patched his wounds as best she could and prepared to jump again. But Moreland didn't follow right away. He had used Spider-Ham's coordinates only as a springboard. His real target was the Spider-Verse itself, a vast, prey-rich hunting ground and the very threat the Inheritors feared. When Gwen realized that, she cut another hole through space-time and tore back to the Alliance headquarters in Universe 982 to warn everyone. She was too late. The building was a slaughterhouse. Every floor was littered with bodies, carpets and walls soaked red. On the sprawling assembly floor, Spider-Man 2099, leader of the Alliance, led the best of their number in a desperate stand. The imposing Tyrannosaurus Spider-Man charged, only to be pinned as Moreland began to feed on his soul. Cowboy Spider-Man, perched on a towering mare, lashed webs from the horse's hooves to try to bind Moreland. Miles Morales from Universe 1610 and a ring of Peter Parkers surged in, converging like a net. For a moment it looked like they might win. If they avoided prolonged contact, dozens of spider heroes could punch and kick with enough force to put someone down. They encircled Moreland, their blows and swings forming a dizzying carousel of fists and webs. He staggered under the onslaught, just as the tide turned in their favor. A new portal popped open. Two blonde figures stepped through in long scarlet trench coats, their manners and looks the sort of elegant menace reserved for vampires. They moved with cruel amusement. One of them snapped the leg off a small spider hero who'd been about to deliver a flying kick, bone and gore spraying like a grotesque bouquet. The blonde man held the severed limb up and drank deeply without flinching. "Delicious," he purred. "Look what Big Brother brought us." The woman beside him licked her lips bloodthirstily. "Of course, a whole cluster of tasty little spiders. Big Brother doesn't like to share. He's beaten to a pulp and still hogging them. How pathetic," the man said with a laugh, sucking the flesh dry before tossing the bone aside. The surviving spider heroes scrambled to shield the wounded Peter Parker, wary and enraged. Moreland, catching his breath from the beating, rose in a fury. "Blix, Berna," he snarled to the newcomers, "if you two plan on going home tonight, join me and help eat these stinking spiders." Chapter 557. Moreland attempts to counterattack Lion-Sony Spider-Verse. Universe 928, New York, Spider Alliance headquarters. Blood painted the headquarters. It was a slaughter, one-sided and merciless. Dozens of Spider-Men fought, but when the three Inheritors, Moreland and his younger siblings Berna and Blix, acted together, they were unstoppable. Gwen wasn't one of the heavy hitters among spider heroes. Even with her in the fight, things only got worse. None of them had experience facing the Inheritors. Even with guidance from Spider-Man 1610 and Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, their numbers kept shrinking. Each time the three caught a Spider-Man, they didn't hesitate. They devoured their prey, feasting on both body and soul. With every soul consumed, the Inheritors grew stronger. They fought with escalating ferocity, and the floors piled with husks of what had once been Peter Parkers. One Peter fighting beside Gwen managed a bitter joke despite everything. "Oh my God, today's Peter Parker disaster day. These guys aren't just our bane, they're Peter Parker's bane." Peter humor kept Gwen from breaking entirely. Her suit was shredded, wounds covered her, but the laugh gave way to resolve. She fired a web and lunged for Moreland. She was hyper-aware of the Inheritors' grasp, avoiding their hands, but the constant constriction left her riddled with new cuts. When a claw nearly tore open her abdomen, despair threatened to overwhelm her. Then she noticed Miguel. The Spider Alliance leader had opened a portal and fled. Despair turned to numb resignation among the remaining spider heroes. Gwen slid down to rest against a wall, breathing hard, and thought of other worlds, the TVA, Wanda, and Lion. If only Lion were here. She let out a long breath, and with nothing left to lose, decided to try one last time. She took the old-time tablet from her backpack and, against the odds, dialed the TVA. It connected. Seeing Lion brought tears to her eyes. Her chest tightened with longing. A year and a moment of seeing him again flooded through her. She didn't get to speak much before screams nearby forced her to cut the call. But the connection had done what she'd hoped. It steadied her. No longer hopeless, she slung a web and darted back into the fray with renewed agility. She dove in and yanked a half-dead Peter Parker from Morland's grip, throwing him to allies who could drag him to safety. She aimed next to free two more when Berna, blonde, aristocratic, half her face smeared with red, flicked a silver throwing knife. The blade sliced Gwen's web. She had to roll in midair, replanning her swing. "Ha! What's the point of saving him?" Berna crowed. The stench of blood only seemed to fuel her. These were no people left. They were predators drunk on the hunt. Blix joined with a cold laugh. "Struggle all you want. You spiders will die." "Why? Because in other multiverses, we're nearly done collecting the bride, the scion, and the other," Blix shouted. "With them, Spider-Man across every multiverse will be extinguished." Morland watched them with a faint, satisfied smile. Gwen crouched on the wall and spat fire back. "You bloodthirsty monsters, when Lion comes, not one of you will escape." Berna and Blix mocked her. But at the name Leon, Morland's pupils narrowed. The name pricked at something, an echo of a previous, inexplicable death. Agitation flickered across him. "You two, quiet," Morland snapped, voice sharp. He turned his blood-glinted gaze on Gwen. "You called that sorcerer for help? Good. Last time he caught me off guard and made my death unfinished. This time I'll wait for him. I'll tear him apart slowly, let him watch as I feed on him. And first," Morland added, "I'll kill you. When he arrives, I'll drain your blood and soul." Then he moved like a predator locked on a single prey, launching himself at Gwen the way a cheetah strikes. For spider heroes, spider sense was their greatest advantage, but against the inheritors, the sense was compromised. Gwen reacted a half-beat too slow. She fired a web to pivot away, but Morland leapt to intercept, pressing to shove her head against the wall. At that instant, other Spider-Men who'd been recovering rallied. Some hurled webs, others fired web balls, and a tiny, determined Lego Spider-Man even leaped to shove Gwen clear. Chaos swelled again, the battle on the brink of erupting. Then a figure shimmered into being on the assembly floor, faint at first, and then impossibly solid. Time stopped. From that figure's perspective, every living thing and inanimate object in Universe 928 froze mid-motion. Morland and his siblings? How did they get here? Lion's voice cut through the silence, equal parts surprise and cold focus. Before crossing, Lion had given Jarvis a few final instructions. He had come the hard way, physically traversing the multiverse rather than relying solely on mystical or procedural means. Where once he had used mental manipulations of reality's rules to hop between worlds, now he used his body. Lion accelerated to a speed that defied light, his motion blending with the fabric of space. One step, and the space between worlds folded. He stepped into this universe, and everything stilled as he anchored himself. The frozen tableau held as Lion looked from the inheritors to the terrified spider heroes, and then to Gwen, bloodied, fierce, and still standing. The air tasted like the before of a storm. Chapter 558, Leon Takes Action. Leon floated toward the center of the battlefield. The little spiders fought with an improviser's instinct. Whatever was at hand became a weapon. They used their webs to fling chandeliers, sofas, computer towers, anything and everything at the three inheritor family members. Shards and wreckage rained down, and the ground was littered with the shriveled husks of fallen spider people. To Morland and his kin, spider people were food. When Morland touched one, he could devour their life force, even their souls. Their family feasted on spider people daily, as casually as if they were serving a roast. Morland reached with a demonic claw toward Lego Spider-Man. His original target had been Gwen, but Lego Spider-Man had shoved her out of the way. Leon drifted in beside Morland and, with idle curiosity, pinched at the pixelated spider's head. The Lego Spider-Man was surprisingly springy, less like brittle brick and more like rubber. As expected of the Spider-Verse, Leon murmured, "It really does have every kind of Spider-Man." Around them lay Dinosaur Spider-Man, Spider-Monkey, Spider-Horse, Spider-Monster, animal spider hybrids whose altered forms made them, in Morland's estimation, even more delectable. A few of them still twitched, partially drained and foaming at the mouth. Most, however, were mummified on the floor. Leon didn't stand idly by. His gaze swept across the mummies, and one by one they were restored. With the barest attention, their withered souls knit back together, blood flowed again, and life returned. Not just those near Morland. Mummies on other floors revived at the same instant. For Leon now, feats like this required nothing more than a look. Having revived the spider people, he checked for Holland Spider, Garfield, and the others, but they weren't here. That absence made sense. The comic, the movies, and other Spider-Verses weren't supposed to be truly interconnected. They should not influence one another. Even the Transcender's Everything Dies experiment had, in theory, been confined to the multiverse it targeted. But since Leon and Little Peter had been dragged into the Spider-Verse by Kingpin's particle collision experiment, that clean separation had begun to fray. The TVA's time pad being able to reach the Spider-Verse after Leon modified it was one sign. A more worrying sign was here with them now. Morlun had crossed the multiverse to hunt. Leon reached into Morlun's mind. Memories spilled into view, a flood of images and sensations. After the last time Leon had killed him, Morlun had been revived in the Inheritor's clone base. The family's secret was that they stored their memories in those bases. Whenever one of them died, they simply used their stored memories to reanimate a cloned body. Reborn, Morlun had obsessed over the Spider-Verse, hunting for a way back. When the comic Multiverse began experiencing world collisions growing more chaotic, Morlun seized his opportunity. He remembered the auras of Gwen, Spider-Ham, and the others. When a universe collided and cracked, he slipped through a spatial weak point and arrived in the Spider-Verse. His younger siblings, under orders from their father Solace, had tracked him. Leon finished scanning the memories and frowned. Crossing the barrier had been disturbingly easy. The comic universe is undergoing collisions too, he thought aloud as the images arranged themselves in his mind. Their collisions will leave no universe untouched. Dr. Doom will eventually piece a new world, Battle World, out of the wreckage, and Doom is active on my side as well. He likely plans the same. The fates are growing similar. If Morlun can cross worlds so easily, then the Transcenders might be able to reach the MCU. Leon had been relieved earlier when he believed the movie Multiverse's collisions weren't caused by the Transcenders. Now, seeing how freely Morlun had moved between universes, that relief vanished. He reached out and touched Morlun's forehead. A lethal force flared from him, rushing through Morlun's body and draining him. But Leon's power did not stop at the corpse. It followed the chain of causality across the void and struck Worlds 01 of the comic multiverse, the Inheritors' stronghold and their clone factory. The power detonated there, not with a conventional explosion, but with erasure. The factory's existence unraveled, as if the universe itself had unmade it. Dust scattered through empty space. Morlun, who had ventured across the multiverse to hunt, died utterly. His twin siblings, struck at the same causal node, also collapsed, their bodies carbonized into ash. The Inheritor family lost 3 principal members permanently. Then Leon released his hold and returned to his normal state. Time in the Spider-Man Alliance building snapped back into the rhythm shared by everyone else. In truth, Leon hadn't stopped time. He had moved with such enormous speed that his subjective second felt like millions upon millions of seconds to the others. Everything he had done took only a blink from their perspective. The spider people surged forward, fists and feet raining down, only to meet empty air and dissipating dust. The ashes of the 3 inheritors drifted and scattered. The spider people reached out and caught flecks of the blackened fragments, watching them crumble into nothing in their palms. For a long, stunned moment, no one moved. Lego Spider-Man wobbled, then sat down on his backside, equally shocked. Only Gwen understood immediately. She collapsed to the floor, then, seeing Leon standing there when she glanced back, she scrambled upright and cried out, "Leon, I knew you'd make it." Chapter 559, The State of the Comic Multiverse. Once the Spider-Men understood the situation, they were equal parts grateful and stunned at Leon. They swarmed around him, 100 chattering mouths full of questions and thanks. "Oh my God, how did you do that? You killed the Morlun siblings in an instant. They were monsters. So many of us died." "You revived everyone. Incredible. Superman, did you fly around the Earth and reverse time? I've seen that in the movies." They complained too about their leader, Spider-Man 2099. "Miguel is the worst. How could he abandon us? He should have taken us with him. I'm never voting for him again, if we even vote." These Spider-Men, apart from lacking profanity, behaved like a crowd of Deadpools. Leon had zero tolerance for it. He exhaled, and the swarm of spiders launched themselves backward out of the Alliance building and began to freefall. Before they could scatter, Leon turned to Gwen, who had stayed behind. "I'm going to Moreland's universe to take a look, and while I'm there, I'll send his whole family to reunite," he said. "If I don't, they'll keep coming after us." Gwen's smile vanished. She grabbed his arm. "Wait, are you going alone? Aren't you taking us? There are so many of us. We should go together to beat the inheritors." "No." Leon not only refused, he tried to pull his arm free. Gwen hugged his arm to her chest. "If you don't take them, they'll find a way to go anyway. And if you won't take them, at least take me, right?" Leon looked at her. Take a whole gaggle of Spider-Men into the comic multiverse? What could they possibly do? Cheer? He couldn't bring them along. Still, he felt the soft, elastic pulse of her youth in that embrace, and remembered old Shazam's comment in the DCEU that he wasn't pure enough. The old man hadn't been wrong. Leon shook his head. "Don't drag me down." He freed his arm. Gwen gasped. He tapped her forehead with a knuckle. "Soon, both your multiverse and mine could be in danger. We need to prepare. Don't follow me to Moreland's world. Handle your own situation first." "You can send those Spider-Men to the TVA," he added. "Dr. Doom's recent rebellion has shut down the TVA, but that's exactly where they need to go. Let them put their abilities to use and help stabilize this multiverse." With that, he stepped through and left the Spider-Verse. Gwen held her reddening forehead, hands on her hips, looking briefly indignant. Then she watched the spot where he'd been, smiled, and launched a web to fetch the other spiders. The year of gloom she'd carried seemed to lift. The Marvel comic multiverse was Leon's first time entering that reality. The difference hit him immediately. This multiverse was enormous. In the movie universe, his mental reach could instantly span nearly half the cosmos. Here, after he pushed his mind outward, he couldn't even touch the edges. If the movie universe was a stream, the comic multiverse was a river, no, an ocean. If you compared them as numbers, the movie universe might be an infinite set of positive integers. The comic multiverse was positive and negative integers plus fractions. He scanned his surroundings and felt horror tighten his gut. Not a single universe in his sight was safe. Worlds were colliding everywhere. The collision event had already reached the mid to late stages. This crisis was far worse than anything he'd seen. The Infinity Stones here weren't the primordial singularity-born relics of his movie world. They had a different history. At one time, a complete set could destroy a multiverse, but after Thanos' catastrophe, the Life Tribunal curtailed their power. Since then, the Infinity Stones had been weakened and restricted. Their effects were limited to the universe of origin, and removed from that universe, they became inert. When the collisions began, comic world heroes couldn't simply use the stones to shove other Earths away. Pushing at that scale would shatter the gems. Unable to repel colliding worlds, many defenders resorted to a grim alternative, destroying the other Earth. Earth 616, among the strongest in the comic multiverse, had gone berserk. Avengers and Illuminati, aside from Captain America, had repeatedly crossed moral lines and become monsters themselves. Leon looked out and saw tragedy in every direction. He sent a handful of Legioduo M bodies into those doomed worlds to buy time, then headed toward a particular universe, Earth 13. Even as the multiverse tore at its seams and heroes slaughtered other Earths, the little spiders had their own war to fight. The Inheritor family and Spider-Men were locked in full-scale battle. With Spider Slayers hunting them, the spiders had no choice but to band together. Earth 13 belonged to Cosmic Captain Spider-Man, an emissary of eternity, a cosmic herald, much like Galactus's heralds. This Spider-Man had been granted cosmic power and a role as eternity's representative. Within his universe, he wielded terrifying power, near multiversal in scale, and the other spiders had gathered seeking his protection. Even so, the Inheritors had come. Solace, the ancient patriarch, was there with other family members. He had wandered countless universes and devoured innumerable powerful Spider-Men. Even Cosmic Captain Spider-Man could only stalemate Solace. The Captain's power stemmed from eternity's creative force, a power that should have dominated this universe, but Solace had eaten so many spider essences that he could consume even cosmic energy like simple life force. Their clash shattered the ground and cracked planets. The assembled spiders were helpless to intervene. They could only pray. When Solace seized an opening, clamped both hands around the cosmic captain's head, and began to devour him, hope fell from every heart. Main Universe Peter Parker felt his body go cold. Then a voice said, casual and cutting through the chaos, "Oh, looks like I arrived just in time." Leon appeared and kicked Solace away from the Spider-Man who was losing his life to consumption. Chapter 560, Seeing One Punch Superman Again. Solace flew backward, tearing through a swath of mountains. Cosmic Captain Spider-Man collapsed to the ground, gasping like a drowning man pulled from the water. He knelt there, body trembling, and after several deep breaths managed to look up at Leon. Thank you, Your Excellency. As a messenger of eternity, Cosmic Captain Spider-Man recognized Leon immediately as an abstract entity. "Are you here to help us?" he asked. Still struggling to catch his breath, Leon smiled. "I came looking for the Inheritor family and to see an old friend, but he doesn't appear to be here." He glanced at the cluster of Spider-Men running in from the other side. Cosmic Captain Spider-Man froze for a moment. "Your friend? An abstract concept?" "No," Leon said. "The Spider-Man from Earth 616. He went hunting through other universes to gather more Spider-Man allies." Cosmic Captain Spider-Man hesitated, then asked, "Are you looking for the Inheritors to help 616's Spider-Man?" "Not exactly." Golden light spread around Leon. "I intend to send the Inheritor family home." Solace was still roaring in the distance as he tried to recover. Leon's expression hardened. Even against comic universe powerhouses, Leon had to be cautious. In their setting, beings like Solace and Captain were considered universe-level threats, figures who, depending on the plot, could even oppose eternity. Leon shifted into his strongest physical state. His biofield flared, golden blood surged through him like a tide, and every muscle locked at peak readiness. He didn't use any rule powers. After elevating his understanding of the world's rules, his physical form had become his deadliest weapon. He clenched his fist and charged. In an instant, the space between them vanished under the impact of his steel-like body. Leon's punch struck Solace cleanly in the face. There was no dramatic energy explosion, just a solid, silent blow, but it felt to Solace like a multiverse pressing down on him. His ancient features warped, contorted, and then shattered. He had no time to respond or counter. He could only take it. Solace roared, but when Leon drew his fist back, the being who had endured universe force, attacks had been pulverized into countless microscopic particles and merged into the world's matter. Even his life core was destroyed in a single strike. He simply dissipated. Because Leon used his biofield to contain the attack, the shockwave didn't spread. Only Solace vanished. The surrounding earth didn't even tremble. Leon flexed his hand quietly. "It's been a long time since I felt a full-force punch. Not bad." Since his comprehension of the rules reached near creation level, Leon seldom fought with sheer physicality. His old rule powers had been stronger than his body, and relying on brute force risked losing control. He didn't want to end up like Wolf Superman, who had to let enemies hit him a few times just to judge them. Still, landing a decisive, full-strength punch carried an intoxicating satisfaction. The little spider people from the comic universe who had gathered nearby stood stunned. He just killed Solace like that? That Solace almost took down Captain. That hit, it reminds me of our Hulk. When 616 Spider-Man and Superior show up, they're going to be terrified. Now that Solace is gone, will he respawn? Can we use this to counterattack the Inheritors? They chattered anxiously. Meanwhile, two surviving Inheritor family members, Genix and Deimos, had been trying to slink away. Leon glanced at them, and a silent, invisible force descended, erasing them. Solace, Morlun, Deimos. He briefly reviewed the list of the Inheritor family's main villains he'd encountered in the comics. By now, they had all been eliminated. In the comics, even when Spider-Man and his allies defeated the Inheritors, those villains were only banished to a ruined universe and later returned. Leon had just destroyed their cloning factory and then struck down the principal hunters. These predators of Spider-Man would not be coming back. They were gone for good. It felt as if he had swept through a dozen comic issues in a single move. "I'll go to their universe next and send the rest of their kin back to reunite," Leon said, waving to Cosmic Captain Spider-Man as he prepared to leave. At that moment, the space near them fluctuated, and a blue glowing portal opened. Leon and the others turned. It wasn't an inheritor who stepped through. It was a large group of Spider-Men. Leading them was the Earth 616 Spider-Man Leon had met years ago. He'd returned with reinforcements. 616 Spider-Man's eyes widened at the shattered ground and the disarray of the scene. He scanned the area for the inheritors, found nothing, and then spotted Leon. Leon, it's really you. He swung in on a web and landed nearby. I didn't expect to find you here. Things in our world are strange right now. I thought I might never see you again. Leon nodded. Long time no see, Peter. Moreland slipped into that multiverse again, and to stop them from causing more trouble, I went after them. 6 and 16 Spider-Man blinked. So you came to help? Leon shook his head. They've already been... Haha, Leon, it's fine. Even though the inheritors are powerful, we found some strong reinforcements this time. 616, Spider-Man grinned, trying to put everyone at ease. He opened his arms toward the portal and called out, Everyone, look who I brought back.